Hello, welcome to Build Day Live. I'm Jeffrey Powers. Today we're going to look at the new Lenovo ST45 server with the EPYC 4004 processor inside. We're going to talk about its use cases, look at the architecture of the box, and put it into play in a remote office situation. Before we get into this, I do have to mention Build Day Live is being sponsored in creating this unbox video and showing you how AMD can be installed into your infrastructure. All opinions are that of Build Day Live. If you have any questions, you can contact us for more information via Build Day Live, or just leave a comment over at youtube.com/Build Day Live. The core of this system is once again the AMD EPYC 4004 processor. This is a low-powered processor at only 65 watts that runs on the AMD Pro 665 chipset. The EPYC 4004 processor also supports up to 16 Zen 4 cores with 32 threads and a boost of 5.7 gigahertz. In our video, we will be running the 4344P chip, which is 8 cores, 16 threads. By the way, the processor number 4344 tells me this is a 4000 product series, with the 3 indicating 8 cores from the chart you see there. The first 4 is the performance level within the core count, and this is a 4th generation processor with the second 4. The P indicates that it is a single socket processor, and if your processor has an X at the end, that includes the AMD's 3D V-Cache technology. And while the 4004 processor has up to 16 cores, the ST45 only supports cores with 65-watt thermal design power. The 4004 series also supports 28 PCIe Gen 5 lanes and up to 2 DDR5 channels for a max of 5200 megatransfers per second. And AMD's security architecture is there to help protect sensitive data and workloads. Therefore, running something like a VM will be encrypted in memory, so sensitive data is protected. Today, we're going to unbox and set up this machine for a role in a small business, a print server, a file server, and possibly more. But first, I talked with David Weber more about the EPYC 4004 processor and how this fits into the portfolio of the AMD EPYC processor lineup. We have David Weber here from AMD, and we're talking about the chip that I'm going to be getting inside of this ST45. David, tell us a little bit about who you are.
I'm the senior product manager for the EPYC 4004 family. So the chip you'll be getting is one of a family of 8 in the 4004 series. I'm not sure which one you're going to get, so maybe it's going to be a surprise, but we can talk about all of them. One of the things that I really like to tell people is that when you look at one of the EPYC families of CPUs, any of them, one of the core things that we do is we make sure that the features are consistent. So you may see different core counts, different cache sizes, and so on, but there's no compromise in terms of capabilities to support memory, no changes in up and down memory speed or any of that kind of business. So we can have a conversation about all 8 of them as if they were one in terms of features.
Let's go the lowest to the highest. How many cores?
4 to 16 cores.
And I'm assuming all the caches inside of there. Anything else that kind of steps out with the 4004 series?
There are a couple in the family that use our 3D V-Cache technology. So they will go up really significantly higher in terms of L3 cache. So interesting in terms of compute-intensive workloads.
If this box is going to be meant for something with a little bit more employees inside of a small shop or more jobs or whatever, then something like that would be what you would gear towards.
The real application for this high cache is engineering workloads. It's not going to make Office faster. It's not going to make your database faster. Okay. But it will make your engineering rendering jobs faster and cleaner. The technology within the AMD portfolio shows up in a lot of gaming systems on the desktop, and the workloads there are computationally intense. They are really, really hard on things like iterative math. things that require a lot of data to stay resident in the cache so the CPU can crank on it over and over again. Those are the sorts of things where you're going to get the most lift.
Okay. And then as a whole, what all other advantages do the series of 4004 processor give us?
So there are a couple of things to think about. One is power efficiency. So relative to the number of cores that you're going to get in the EPYC 4004 family, the power that it takes to drive those cores is low. So, I mean, relative to the other offerings in the industry. So you can get a lot of work done without having to turn on a hairdryer or, put the microwave on high. That sort of effort should be incremental to the work you're doing. You don't need to have the fans on high all day or that sort of thing. There's
no overclocking options.
We're not going to prevent it, but in the same kind of way that the Ryzen family supports overclocking, overclocking is something that you should do under very careful circumstances and understand that you can void your warranty by doing it. For business class systems, probably not what we're expecting folks to do.
The ST45 itself is not really meant as a gaming system by any means.
Right.
It definitely can get a lot of workload if you have people that are very dependent on if it's a mail server, they do a lot of mail, or if it's a file server, they're doing a lot of back and forth copying, and of course, if a print server, do a lot of printing. How have you guys workload tested the 4004?
There's a broad spectrum of workloads, and in general, when you look at benchmarking, what you're trying to do is find things that closely represent the world that this CPU is going to live in. And it's a general purpose CPU. That means it does pretty much everything. So do we know everything that people are going to be doing? No. But we start with the standard benchmarks for server class productivity. Server class meaning just the essentials of like integer and floating point performance, the spec suite of benchmarks. And within the spec suite, the 4004 family does very well, both in terms of per core and per socket performance. It does better than any of the other processors in its class. If you go to someplace like Open Benchmarking or to spec.org and see the full set of tests that will have been run, you can compare the EPYC 4004 parts, both again by per core and per socket, against any of the other offerings in server class hardware in this space. The interesting thing about both of those sites is you can also look at the power efficiency. So don't just look at what that performance is, but how well does it deliver that performance at a lower power point than the competitive offerings? There were a couple of other features that I think are worth noting. First off, when we looked at bringing the EPYC brand into the small and mid-market space where these little compact servers are really the most important thing, we knew that customers were looking for capabilities like RAID. So the CPU comes with a RAID offering, and Lenovo will be offering that on the ST45. The CPU also supports ECC memory. So error checking and correcting memory is an important thing for long and consistent uptime. You want to make sure that your memory is not going to be subject to errors. So that checking and correcting means that if there is an error, you can correct it on the fly. So all of those are capabilities in the CPU. And we inherit that from the Big Daddy EPYC product line that has led the high performance computing, top 500 lists for the last decade.
Okay.
So let's see if we want to take it another direction. There is what we call the secure processor. It's actually an embedded processor in the CPU that handles security tasks. So another capability is what we call TSME, Transparent Secure Memory Encryption. by leveraging the capability of that secure processor, you can actually flip a switch, and it transparently encrypts memory. And this is really interesting for cases where the system might be vulnerable to a physical attack, where someone can get to the system. If memory is encrypted, even while it's running, they can't actually snoop the data that you're using in there. You want to, in all security cases, you want to use multiple layers of encryption, so encrypting the data at rest and in transit as well. But that means that one more layer is there.
Absolutely. If I can have the thieves hit a brick wall at any point in time in their attack, that's a bonus.
Yep, one more layer.
One more layer, absolutely. Well, I think we've got everything on the 4004. Okay. So, David, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Jed.
Today, we're going to be unboxing the Lenovo ST45, a newer computer from Lenovo with the AMD EPYC 4004 processor inside. We're going to open this up and take a look inside. Let's go ahead and do this. Bring it up. There we go. It's going to be fairly basic, and it might be a little bit different for you depending on which model of Lenovo you purchased. There we go. There's one. And there's two. All right, this is the box. As you can see, it is pretty straightforward. Desktop in the back, you can see where we can put in our PCI cards, where the power goes. All the slots, we'll take a look at that in a minute. And then, of course, in the front, classic ThinkSystem logo. We've got a place to put extra drives. We got some USB ports and more. So let's take a closer look at that. We'll start up at the top. Of course, we've got our standard power button. We've got a headphone jack and a microphone jack, an extra slot right here, maybe for an SD card. I don't have it on this one. Got a USB-C right here. That's a 10 gig USB-C, and then 4 USB-A ports. On the back, we have a standard speaker port. We got a display port and a HDMI and a second display port. Keep in mind, the GPU is actually within the CPU. There is no external GPU for this system. Moving down, we have our 1 gig Ethernet, and we've got 4 more USB-A ports right here, and then PCIe expansion slots right here. And then on the bottom, we have our power plug and fan. Let's go ahead and do so. Simple thumb screws on the side here that will take care of the machine door. And by the way, also on the door, we do have a couple spots right here and up here to lock the system if you need to. Let's go ahead and take this thumb screw out, slides out, and open it up. As you can see, we have a lot of infrastructure here where we can put in drives, including CD-ROM drives or hard drives or anything like that. For this model, this is a 300-watt power supply. You don't need too much more because we're not going to be doing any graphics cards or anything like that. We have 2 bays down here for a conventional hard drive or an SSD if we want to, and a lot more. Let's see how we can pop this. Pop up. There we go. We'll pop that up to slide that out. There we go. That's the first bay right there. Now we can see a little bit more on the inside here. On the inside, you can see the processor with the heatsink right here. We've got a fan back over here. Let's see. We got 2 PCIe slots right there. This one is the 16, and this one's an X2. Memory bay over here. As you can see, we got 1 DIMM of memory. You can put in another on the other side right here. We got 2 SATA ports over here, but we also have an M.2 spot right there. You can't see it because this bar is in the way. If we pull up and slide out, there we go. And now you can see the M.2 down here. Extra system fan right there. We could put in a beefier power supply if we wanted to, but this is simply just going to be running the board, the chip, and whatever PCI cards you have in here. But we do have some extra power spots if you need. Your system may vary a little bit. I don't know if you see this, but I see some extra port areas right here for maybe like a parallel card or something like that. So depending on the model of board that you get, this is going to be a little bit different. But the overall size of this box right here is actually pretty small. In fact, let's just take out the tape measure here. As you can see, we're about 14.5 inches by almost 12 inches here. So it's relatively small box that you need. Of course, the height or the width is about 7 inches for this case. So you don't need too much space to put this. And with the 300-watt power supply, like I said, it's 65 watts to run this with the board, the processor, the memory, and a couple hard drives. So you'll be able to do a lot with this, whether it be some sort of file storage or some sort of printer management or anything like that. As we take the heatsink off, we can take a look at the processor here. Processor is the EPYC 4344P processor, which basically this one has 8 cores or 16 threads inside of here. It goes up to 5.3 gigahertz, 32 megabyte L3 cache right here. So with the processor, there's the ports over here. We've got our capacitors, CPU fan that was for the heat sink over there. The memory, let's take a look at the memory here. It is 16 gigs worth of memory. So, yeah, but once again, you can order it to your spec. Moving over here from the processor, you can see that X16 PCIe, and then of course the X2 is right there. Over here, you can't really see it, but we do have SATA ports over here. There are 2 in this case, but there's an optional 3rd one from the board layout here. We also have M2 slots right here and right here. So those are the M2 slots right next to the SATA ports. And then of course that's the front of the machine. And that is the ST45. What we'll do is we'll repaste it, put back on the heatsink, and set it up and turn it on. Let's go ahead and boot up this Lenovo and see what we got. Let's take a look. So we see the Lenovo logo here. That's popping up. There we go. For the BIOS, you will only need the keyboard. And there we go. Straight into the BIOS. We basically have checked the system summary. This is the EPYC 4344P 8-core processor, as we talked about. CPU speed is at 5.35 gigahertz. We got 16 gigs of memory installed, and then I put in the drive, which is a 4 terabyte M2 drive. And of course, there are more M2 slots, and then you'll need to get the power cables for the SATA drives, but you can add up to 4 SATA drives from this 300-watt processor. As we can see, we got the machine type and model. This is the 70HSCTO1WW board, the ST45V3. We've got all the options here. We've got USB setup. We've got ATA setup. We've got our audio setup because there is an onboard audio controller. We've got network setup, and we've got the PCIe Express card set up right there. We can do some CPU adjustments, very basic right here. By the way, at the time of this recording, this is the correct BIOS, the most up-to-date BIOS from here. We have the NVMe configuration, gigabit driver for the Ethernet, power configuration, security configuration, startup. Didn't see anything for Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, of course. That does not come with this model. So as you can see, this machine is fairly lightweight, but with a chipset that is up to date. I ran some benchmarks and got some fairly promising results, even for this lighter version chip. The AMD Radeon GPU inside will give you the graphical need for remote desktop and some GPU program needs. But keep in mind, the PX series chip will be what you may need if the small office is on the larger side. Speaking of offices, I was interested to talk with Robert Constantine of Lenovo to learn more about how this ST45 can be utilized into a large and small enterprise system. We got Robert Constantine here from Lenovo, and we're talking about the ST45, which is a brand new box with the AMD 4004 chip inside here. Robert, tell us your thoughts on how this box is going to really play into the small business or the bigger business remote office or anything like that.
I think this is like a very interesting milestone for Lenovo and AMD because this is the first tower that Lenovo and AMD are building together. And even though it's an opening price point machine, it's our first tower featuring an AMD EPYC from the 4000 series. Zen 4 architecture. And this is like specifically designed for small businesses, remote or branch offices. We notice many small businesses are struggling with consumer grade hardware, trying to run business workloads. And this server, the ST45 V3, is bridging the gap between enterprise features, unmatched power of the new EPYC processor, and performance all at an accessible price point. Yeah.
So basically what I would do is I would purchase this box. I'd put it into a remote office or something that needs some sort of file server, print server, or anything like that, which I've done many of those in my day. But why would they choose the ST45 over, let's say, just a regular Ryzen Lenovo combo desktop?
Very good question. So first of all, I think because we do have server OS support on this machine. On the desktop side, although the CPU might be very good, you will not have a server OS support. Then there would be the specific design of the machine to be as a server, to be more reliable. We do have chassis of 17 liters, which is similar to towers, but still presenting server grade components and characteristics. This is a processor that is very powerful, but also consumes power in a normal way. So basically you get more for the buck given in energy. It has also a support for RAID. So basically you can do a harder RAID on this machine as well. Whereas on the desktop side, it's not that available anymore. So in a nutshell, I think the server grade reliability, the energy efficiency, and also it's a very quiet server, I would say, for its performance. So this would be the benefits of going with this server machine over a desktop one. Yeah.
Now you said that we're running memory of DDR5 in there. How many DIMMs can we put into that?
So basically we can go up to 64 gigs of RAM. So like you said, this is a DDR5 and you can put 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay. So 232, what's the lowest you could do on it?
I also have configurations of 16. You know, I would not recommend going below 16 with the current needs and demands for even a file server or a mail server, or I don't know, even like some small office apps. I do have like 4, 6, 8 core, 12 core configurations, and I have like combinations between them. So basically the 4, 6 cores, I'm pairing them up with 16 gigs of RAM, which is a 5200 megahertz DDR5. And then with the higher core count, like 8, 12, I am pairing them up with 32, 64, depending on the necessity of the customer or the partner.
Yeah. How many people are in the office? Now, this one PCIe slot, which would then be the 10 gigabit, is my understanding. It comes with 1 gigabit Ethernet inside integrated, expandable to 10, and that's through the PCIe, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, network connectivity is very good, and this provides like I would say, upward compatibility, because maybe not in all branches we do have the gigabit or we have like 10 gigs Ethernet, but basically we do want to offer like the upward compatibility in the future via options and expansion cards via this PCI. Basically, this is like a future-proof machine in terms of this networking connectivity.
Okay. Is it PCIe 4.0 or 5.0 architecture?
Yes, it's 4.0.
4.0 architecture. So you could put in a NIC card, you could put in a fiber card.
Yes.
You can't put a graphics card in, is my understanding.
No.
But smaller cards will work. Okay.
So the power supply, it's actually, you can have like 2 choices. So you can choose from a gold and a platinum. The gold is like 300 watts. The platinum is like 500. So basically, I think they're more than sufficient for the design tasks for which this machine was built. On the other hand, I agree with you. You can have entry-level cards that can help you, perform better in this scenario.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is I'm thinking if the office actually does have fiber connection rather than a NIC, then you could put a fiber card into there. Or if they need, I don't know, more USB ports for more printers. If this is some sort of printer farm or something like that, then they can put in expansion that way. Is there any other features that we need to be aware of with this with the ST45?
Yeah, so I would say that one of the most interesting things about this case is that it's very quiet. This is because of the combination between the case and the CPU.
Okay.
You have an interesting machine that it's, I would say, quite powerful or powerful enough to deliver state-of-the-art performance for this type of workloads, but at the same time, not taking off below your desk, because we really wanted to check and to see if we can build like a very quiet machine that can sit in a classroom, in a travel agency, in an insurance agency, in a branch office, actually. Yeah. And
Okay.
this is it.
All right. Well, Robert, thank you very much for your time and telling us a little bit more about this new box from Lenovo, the ST45.
Thank you very much.
Now it's time for some use cases. I did install Windows 11 Server 2022 onto the machine, along with a version of Linux. Install was fairly quick, and I had the machine set up within an hour. Beyond a print server, a web server, or file server, I wanted to try some other things, including some AI functions. So I installed the open source program Vibe, which is an AI software that will transcribe audio and even create summaries and captions for videos. The program transcribed without an issue, but it was a little bit slow due to the minimal resources on the machine in the shop. By moving to a higher core PX processor and 32 gigabytes of memory, this could make for a decent system for simple AI functions, such as transcription. All this time, I was measuring the temperature, the fans, and everything on the machine, and the machine did not go into any critical levels. I continually checked with both sensor data and with a heat gun, and the processor with the GPU didn't pass 63 Celsius, 156 degrees Fahrenheit in GPU-intensive functions. The power also stayed under 65 watts for those higher-end tasks, with an idle power draw of only 30 watts. With the size and speed, having this machine run outside a data center, in a corner, in a remote office will not be a problem. It has room to grow. It has room to grow if more storage or memory needs to be added, and with its DDR5 and PCIe 5 technologies inside, data will not bottleneck here. In conclusion, the Lenovo ST45 server with the AMD EPYC 4004 processor offers an excellent balance of power, flexibility, and energy efficiency. It's a solution that adapts well to both small and large office setups, provides a robust performance while keeping power consumption low. From print servers to file servers to basic applications, this machine proves it's more than capable. But I always welcome your opinion on this build. Let me know in the comments below over at youtube.com/builddaylive. Thanks a lot for watching.